Good morning, everybody. Today is Monday, May 23rd, 2022, and we're so glad that you're here with us today. Sorry, I took a nice few seconds just listening to the music. Sometimes it's a nice, peaceful start to a Monday morning, so cheers to you. All right. Well, I hope that everyone had a wonderful weekend. Because I did. So on Friday, we had a nice little episode off day, but on Thursday, we had episode 102, and it was taking control of your life in both big and small ways. And in that, we talked a little bit about how you can, well, first off, the importance of taking control of your life and not just being a float in the parade. But two, one of the biggest things we wanted to emphasize was how taking control of your life in a big way realistically starts with you starting with a bunch of small things. And even if you never do more than just try and improve and control those small things, that can make your everyday reality that much better, which makes your world better. So that was one of the big messages from Thursday, and we talked a little bit about the larger things as well. And of course, per usual with Danielle and me talking, and me and anyone talking, we had plenty of side tangents and fun stories on the side. So one of the things I wanted to make sure to mention, though, was our challenge. So our challenge for last week was to take inventory, not for last week, but for last Thursday. The challenge was to take inventory of your life, figure out what is and isn't out of your control, what is within your control. Because that was another big point from Thursday's message, was that not everything is within your control, and chiefly among those things are the thoughts and feelings of other people, and whether those are people in your family, in your personal life, in your job, accepting what you can and can't control, and largely letting go of the things you can't control is a huge step. And I know that's one that's harder for some people than others. So the challenge on Thursday was to take inventory of your life, figure out what is not in your control, and try and let go of those things. And then for the things that are within your control, maybe you could start to take a couple of steps to better wrap your hands around that. Okay, let me give one last skim here, see if there are any big things, a couple of the small things that could lead to bigger things. As I mentioned, one was to take control of your sleep. We talked a little bit about that. Even something as simple as reimagining what your shower time looks like. What is the purpose of your shower? Danielle's not favorite quote, but one she says all the time: "Not my circus, not my monkeys." A great quote for you to repeat whenever you're trying to deal with something that's either not in your control, or you've just decided to let those things happen, which is also a great thing to do. I would think of the Rush song where they say, "If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice." So that is our recap for 102. So let's jump over to our intro before we get into today. Helpful for life. And welcome to What the Hell is Water. I am Reid Garcia. Today is May 23rd. It's a Monday, 2022, and this is episode 103. Hope everyone's doing great. Today we have an exciting episode with one of my friends, Chinarut. He and I met in what's something called a Rome book club, which I'm going to keep our intro very brief because we have plenty of topics for us to talk about. But just a real quick and dirty on it is there's a note-taking software, digital note-taking software called Rome, which if you guys have listened to this show, some of you have heard us mention before, I'm sure, as it is one of the key tools that I use when running both my personal life and my business and my dreams and aspirations. And there's a community that exists around Rome, and a while back there was a book club started, which we'll tell a little bit more about later. But as part of this Rome Book Club, which is usually abbreviated RBC, I joined and did number 5 and number 6. And within probably that first one is when I met Chinarut, and we participated some through the book club, and we've had some conversations outside of that, including one where we actually recorded a What the Hell is Water episode at a non-live time, which was meant to be aired but never got aired. The downside of me not doing live things is it's easy for me to drop the balls that need additional movement when they fell outside of my normal process. So we're working on that in the back end, but until then, we were convincing enough to tell Chinarut, hey, come talk to us, but just come a little earlier. Wake up nice and early for us, and we'll put you on live in prime time. So here he is, bright and early on the West Coast. Without further ado, Chinarut, welcome. Good morning.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yes. So again, thank you so much for coming. And this time you're already live. There's no editing to be done, so no worries about that one. So first, before we dive into some of our topic today, why don't you tell us in about a minute or two, just a quick who you are, and yeah, the whole life in a tiny sentence or few, right? As fun as it is to summarize.
Well, thank you. I'm a fairly avid connector of all things, and I'm the founder of Weekday Legacy, which is a social commons for connecting our legacies together, weaving our legacies together in a nutshell. And I'm just an avid explorer. Legacies for me exist in the world of technology, the arts, dance. We had a really great conversation around dance, and I really like what you said earlier in regards to taking the small things and making things bigger, because Weave Your Legacy is all about taking your purpose and really weaving it in with the purpose of everybody in the world, and kind of allowing this larger purpose to emerge.
Yes. Oh, wrong button there. Sorry, that's pressed the wrong button, but now you're back. Yes, and I really like the idea and the concept of weave your legacy. For those who aren't familiar with it, tell us a bit more about what weave your legacy is.
Well, I think to tie it into what you said earlier, I think I went through a phase of really doing an inventory and getting crossing things off my list, and really crafting my personal brand was really important. And so I stumbled upon a method called Business Model U, and I decided to just commit to the method and and explore. Put my CEO hat on for life and really look at my design for life. And I really discovered that I was really passionate about creating a global space for having people discover what their community footprint is, and really how that kind of meshes together with everybody else's legacies. And so that was founded in 2013, and it's been a very interesting path, just really discovering my own well-being and committing to the well-being of others, and really discovering that there's just a lot of juice in really starting the social commons inside of well-being, and really discovering a wide variety of kind of intents and areas of life inside of that. And so it's been a very rich experience. And you mentioned RBC, Rome Book Club, and I had the pleasure of actually leading the 7th iteration of the club inside of Rome Book Club, and I'm very thankful for Rome and the community for allowing me to experiment, leading an experiment of how a well-being commons, a social commons for well-being, might look like inside of Rome.
Yeah. So we'll dive a bit more into the book club itself in a second, but thank you for the intro. One of the things I wanted to make sure to define, you've used this term commons a few times, and then also well-being, and then legacy. So let's start with the simplest one, legacy. What would you, how would you define a legacy? What is a legacy?
Oh, if I, I hate to whittle it down to just the word purpose, but I feel like legacy goes beyond that. I feel like, we can discover our purpose, but in the execution of it and the unfolding of it, there's this whole entire world that we create around it. And it's been a dream of mine for quite some time that we engage with our purpose, to, kind of develop a legacy such that, the inevitable thing is we all pass away, and uh, that there is a presence of that legacy on this earth, and that one's legacy can continue. And if these are weaved together, if our legacies are weaved together in such a way, there's this rich resource on the internet, or really in the greater conversation on the planet, around what we're all about.
Nice. So having and discovering some sort of purpose within ourselves and during our lives. And is there also some aspect of passing it onwards, or is legacy just kind of your term that you use to help people kind of frame the scale and importance of it?
Yes, I would say that's a passing it onwards definitely is right on the money there. Um, our legacies, if we really look into the future and do the moonshots, our work is never finished. And so the ability for someone, or even your community, or your friends and family, for those inspired to continue one's work, is really what Leave Your Legacy is all about. Is how can we put these structures together, such that these legacies can continue to evolve.
Yes, no, I appreciate that. That ties in very well. Just so you're aware, the episode title I came up with for today is utilizing networks of people and thoughts to improve the world. And that's one of the reasons I've been drawn to you in our conversations, is because we both seem to be very, very much on the same page of, hey, what are some ways that we can improve ourselves and learn and grow as individuals? And there are a lot of different ways we can do that. But also, how can we use our thoughts and get our thoughts outside of ourselves to work with them and manipulate them to create something bigger and better and hopefully lasting. And then on top of that, how do we plug in other people? Some people who may be related to us, some people who may be complete strangers on the other side of the planet. And one of the ways that we do that is using something called a tool for thought. What would you call, how would you define a tool for thought?
Um, it's interesting because I stumbled into this space without even, I think in 1999, before he was even, this term was coined. I think a tool for thought is some type of platform that is able to capture our thoughts and allow us to journal, to really begin to kind of bring our thoughts together, even as individuals. And I would say that the direction that it's going is a tool for thought, is really able to connect our thoughts, as you say, for others. And something that I've been standing for quite some time, probably over 20 years, is that it be very outcome based, to be very intentional. So, we want to have some kind of purpose behind why we're connecting our thoughts together. And, we like to put our to-do list together, or, our project list together. And if these systems could really, perhaps through artificial intelligence and augmentation, really allow us to connect our thoughts to things we want to get done in the world and aspire to get done in the world, and things that we want to, places we want to make a difference. But yeah, that would be really great. That's what I think a tool for thought is.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And one of the things about, to give a real short, concise answer to wrap that up is a tool for thought, in my mind at least, is anything that helps you think, helps you get things outside of yourself, and bonus points if it helps other people interact with it, right? And I'm as you mentioned, you've got involved with this before there was even the term to just define the thing, right? And but within the last, I don't know, I would say 5-10 years, especially, the world has ramped up a lot. There's a lot of interest in digital note taking and digital project management, digital task management, all of these types of things, and you can get into some things like customer relationship managers or CRMs, if people have heard of those, and all of these digital tools where they help businesses be run. And then there's processes and procedures and all of these things and all these big systems that oftentimes in corporations live in these silos that people never actually use. Well, the shift that's being made is that these tools and these thoughts and this knowledge base is starting to move closer and closer to people's fingertips, and people are starting to, one, better engage with them on a regular basis, and two, better engage with other people to use these things. And so one examples of these tools for thought is Roam Research, the digital note-taking software that we'll be talking about today. Another one is Notion, which is a bit more of a database-driven tool for thought. And we have an episode that we did with a previous guest, Eric. Why am I blanking on his last name? Eric Newhart, where we talked a little bit more about these kind of digital tools. So if that part interests you guys, we'll make sure to include a link to that episode in the chat. But as far as our conversation today goes, we have these tools of thoughts to help us as a collective, as a group of people who are trying to accomplish some outcome together, to work together, to think together. And one of the ways that we utilize these tools for thoughts are book clubs. So when it comes to Roam Book Club, what is Roam Book Club? What's it? How would you describe it?
I think it's always the question of the day, even for the organizers.
Right.
I laugh because, is it a book club or is it, something that kind of like starts in Rome and a book club is kind of like the output. But Rome Book Club, I think a lot of people are familiar with book clubs. You choose a book and you have a discussion around it. And because the way we've created Rome Book Club, it gives us the opportunity to pair this tool for thought and to be able to augment the experience of having a book club, and to be able to not only have the conversations, but have those conversations extend and live inside of Rome Research in this example. And so there is this whole kind of trend of using a kind of pairing a tool for thought with a book club. I mean, that's kind of the meta. And by using a tool for thought, then we're able to kind of do the sense making. We're able to connect thoughts in our own lives to the book a lot more effectively. We're able to connect to other sources, other books out there, videos, podcasts, and so it's kind of like a big web. So it's been a pleasure to be part of Rome Book Club and to really discover what a tool for thought does for a book club community. And it's amazing how every iteration we keep discovering something new. And there's a new aspect of the book club, or Rome Book Club, that we discover, and then we are looking at how to bring all these kind of jigsaw puzzle pieces together, because every single book club has provided a different type of value.
Yeah, no, thank you for the summary. And the thing about Rome Book Club, which again, for those who've been listening for a while, you'll know that I participated in Rome Book Club 5 and 6, as did one of our co-hosts, Ryder Richards. And we've even done a segment one, if not multiple times on here, called "So Good They Can't Ignore Your Range" on this show, which talked about the two books "So Good They Can't Ignore You" and "Range," which was the subject of RBC 6, and then RBC 5 was about how to read a book, which has also made its way being mentioned into the show a handful of times. But I agree with you, especially on the fact that, well, one, I want to point out, have you been with RBC since the first one, or what part did you get plugged in?
It was RBC 2,
Nice. So
which
yeah,
was,
you
yeah, how to take smart notes. Yes.
nice. So yeah, so being there since two, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, man, that's a lot of Rome book clubs in there, and a couple of things. One, for me, one of the biggest benefits for me of doing Rome Book Club was, first of all, just getting engaged with the community of people who were excited to be thinking and engaging and I don't know, brainstorming on whatever it may be. Sometimes it's small things, sometimes it's bigger things like the fate of the world. but but it is cool to be meeting with people who from all over, all different walks of life, all different geographies, who are all interested in the same thing. And so it was really fun and really invigorating, life-giving to see other people who had this energy and were putting it towards this type of thing. And on top of that, for me, it was really cool to see how other people were using this tool, Rome Research. And in some cases, we were watching people live during a meeting or whatnot navigate their digital notebook. And so you get to see how they think and how they use this tool to better interact with themselves. And then, of course, naturally, one of the other cool things is we are thinking aloud, essentially, and allowing each other to interact with our thoughts. That's one of the really cool things about using a digital note-taking tool as part of this book club is if you wanted to get down to a single line of a book, you could, or a single thought or an idea of that book, you could, which a lot of times they do within the book club. But also you could keep it higher level if you want to. But anyways, we could go on about the Rome Book Club as a whole for forever, but I think it was a really powerful way for me to see what could happen when people meaningfully collaborate on something and when people meaningfully try to think together on something, especially when it's outside the constraints of sitting in a meeting room chatting, and also when it's outside of a small room when you have a lot more people than could realistically be heard at one time. So it's been a cool way to see how people can asynchronously interact with each other and brainstorm together and try and come up with, if not the best way to do things, at least a way that is thought out and argued against. So it's something that kind of sparked something in me, and I want to help bottle up some aspects of that and figure out how we can leverage that as we build this company to help people become better selves and help them make their impact on the world. Just like with Weave Your Legacy, like how do we utilize this secret sauce, right? And how do we help share that, and how do we help take the best of it to help people be their best selves? Any quick responses to that before we move on to the kind of the overall thoughts of the Creative Commons and legacy?
I think sense making is the word that really comes to mind. We live in a world that is, I actually, something that just came up yesterday, apparently Twitter, it's going to be a little bit, Twitter has so many conversations out there in the universe that we don't have enough translators to actually keep on top of the world's conversations. And so that's just kind of, I bring that up because exponential information, exponential knowledge, exponential wisdom, and it's overwhelming. And so the value of these types of tools becomes more eminent when you bring a lot of people together who have a lot of bright ideas. And I love how you brought up, making a new friend is one of the most important things in Rome Book Club. Tools are great, but at the end of the day, if you have connected with a collaborator, a new friend in a new way, and like which we have, and that's the fulfilling part of it. It's always the people connection at the end of the day.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that focus back, because if there's one thing that's easy to do, especially in the world of online, especially in the world of tools, it's easy to forget the human, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a big part of the balance. As you know, both you and I, as well as the larger we, go and create things and build things, whether it be companies or products or software or whatever. It's important to keep in mind the human, because I would argue that's one of the problems with design, especially as over the last 20 years or so, I think we've gotten ourselves into this hole that we're now digging ourselves out of, where the so much of people's interactions day to day are dehumanized, and it makes it harder for us to connect. And you may have heard the phrase "connected more than ever, yet never more isolated," or "never more alone," or
Yep.
something like that, right? So of course, you and I both have an interest in helping to prevent that and helping to encourage others to connect with each other, and also just feel the power of positive networking and positive change and positive brainstorming. So with that being said, this Creative Commons, this Legacy Commons, define what that means for you. Like, what is it that you want to try and create with these things?
Okay. You asked about the word commons, and I think the Creative Commons is something, a concept that's been out there for quite some time. The whole idea of a commons is, back centuries ago, we would have like a pasture, with some cows in it, and you know, nobody technically owned that land. It was actually part of the community, and people were really responsible for the animals in in the commons, and really obtaining the resources that they need, like milk, and so the Creative Commons is really this common area for people to kind of contribute creative assets, and to really have some form of attribution, and be able to um, uh, really say that this kind of work, can it be used for kind of for profit use, or can it be remixed, for example. And we wanted to extend that concept into a social commons. And so a social commons is a space where you're networking conversation together, which leads us to the whole realm of the tool for thought, and really networking legacies together. And so in Rome Book Club 7, I introduced the idea of a well-being commons, and I'm really happy that you mentioned the whole, keeping things human, because I chose well-being, because I think well-being is as human as it gets. A lot of people tend to relate to well-being as their physical well-being, their physical health, but well-being really extends to social well-being, like the friends that you make, financial well-being, your sustainability, and the definition of your purpose and your career, and fundamentally community well-being, which is really about where you physically live, and even deeper. This is where it gets tied to legacy. It's the contribution that you make in the world, and the community that you form around you. Um, and so, yeah, so the well-being commons was really is really an experiment to bring conversations around the world around well-being and all these aspects together, and have people make sense of their experience around well-being, and to in a very book club, Rome Book Club kind of way, um, connect with people who you can relate to around well-being, to extend these conversations to people in your lives, and to really have this resource in the universe, in this world, um, where we can keep evolving and discovering around well-being, and really fulfill on what it is that we are here for on this earth.
Yeah, no, that's That's great. Thank you for sharing. A couple of things. One, real quick, I just wanted to point out, you know, there's a term thought leader, which is for someone who wants to share their thoughts on some topic or whatever. And in theory, it's someone who is a leader in the space or whatnot. And in some ways, I strive to be a thought leader, but and more importantly, I strive to be a thought starter, and a conversation starter. And I think the idea of a commons, whether it be digital or in person, you know, for you guys at home who are watching this show, like one of the biggest points of this show is to get you guys thinking, to get you guys feeling, but also to encourage you to start having those conversations with other people. Like Chinarut is mentioning, like some of those people may be physically near you. Some of those people may be in the areas that live with you. Maybe they work with you. But maybe there's some way that you can engage with people on a deeper level. I know that's for certain in line with what I would love for people to do more, is just engage with each other on a deeper level, truly get to understand one another more, be vulnerable with somebody. Your vulnerability may help them be vulnerable with you. It really doesn't take that much to deepen a relationship, other than one person just taking a chance and making a point to make it deeper, especially if it's somebody who you work with all the time. If you're tired of hearing some conversation about their 4-year-old or whatever that you don't really care about, well, find something else, common ground you guys can talk about and engage on a little deeper. Why is it they care so much about their 4-year-old, other than probably that's taking up all their time and mind space, right? But figure out something that you can meaningfully connect on. So just a bit of an aside there. So the commons, I also appreciate you bringing up the history of it, because if there's one thing I think that we've not figured out the best way to do as a society, at least in America, is how do we have something that we feel collectively bought into? Like this area where you were describing commons back in the day, it literally used to be like, hey, this is essentially our group farm or our group, stable or whatever. It's in the interest of the community to maintain these things, these gardens, these whatever it may be, this area for all of us to use together. I feel like we've moved so far away from that, and some of that's thankful, to civilization as it's progressed. We can all sit at home and order everything we need and never leave if we don't have to. So that's a good thing on one hand, right? But on the other hand, I think it leads to us having a little less buy and a less stake in our community and about what we work on together and what we create together and what we're passing on to the people after us. I don't know. These could just be a one-way thought, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Um, there's a lot that really actually showed up in the well-being book club, because as we engaged with conversation for financial well-being, just you can imagine just the sheer number of perspectives of what financial well-being, what money is, the purpose of money, what people do with money, right? It's infinite, and it can potentially be emotionally charged. And some people just don't believe in money, and they want to create gift economies, and you know, like dream about this utopian world, where money doesn't exist, right? And that was one of the beautiful things of where the tool for thought came into play, and where Rome really shone and I could see it as a facilitator to be able to use the technology to be able to really see everybody's perspectives on what financial well-being is, and to be able to dynamically adapt and really listen to what these perspectives are, and to really craft the narrative and prepare for a larger conversation with all our participants, and then even our participants really having even more perspectives to the picture. Um, a tool for thought. I mean, that is like the collective intelligence at its core. It is the ability for a platform like this to kind of increase our empathy and listening for others and their perspectives and the way they lead their lives. And when you're talking about well-being, that's very close to home. And so you're right. It is a very vulnerable experience, and we promised to create a safe space. And one of our tenets was actually developed in a Rome Book Club around the culture code, where we really began to discover how important vulnerability is in bringing us closer together and building the intimacy and really creating the types of teams and communities that we aspire to.
Yeah, and I can't help but think to tie this into the Great Resignation, which is going on, right now, where people are quitting their jobs, and largely people attribute it to, well, I'm not being treated well enough, or I'm not being paid well enough, or what have you. And certainly that's part of the equation, but I think the bigger part of the equation is that, one, it kind of ties back to people's value of money and well-being, and a lot of people have reevaluated what that is for them. And yes, there's a whole rabbit hole we could dive down with that one, so I'll leave that to the side. But the concept of becoming more engaged and bought into whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether that's work related or personal related, being engaged and caring about the thing you're doing can make all the difference, right? And that's what can help you tolerate the negative things that can come from collaborating with people, right? Especially if there's not that solid culture there. So part of it is, hey, can I find a culture where I can feel cared for, where I can feel empowered, where I can, where my ideas and thoughts and feelings can really shine? I think that's something that a lot of people are looking for, and I think we could all benefit from more people finding something like that. But I think that's true regardless of whether or not you find it in a job. I would highly encourage people to find somewhere where you can get plugged in, where you can be valued, where your thoughts do matter, and people let you know that they matter and they interact with them. And that's, again, the value of doing something like, whether it be Rome Book Club or some other sort of community that you get plugged into. Even if it's something that you think may not really be significant or whatever. For example, maybe you play a video game. If you get plugged into a video game where you're chatting with people who are playing that, you're playing with people who are enjoy your company, having a great time, like, that's a valuable thing to do, even if it's solely for entertainment. So the idea of getting plugged in with people who value you, it can completely change your life. And I think that there's been many people within Rome Book Club who have mentioned that club specifically, and using that tool and that process has been extremely valuable for them. So that's also been cool to witness and hear. It's like, hey, these people are genuinely talking about how much being involved with something like this has impacted their lives, which I think has also just amped up my desire to help get more people plugged into something like this, especially as we mentioned before, how easy it is to be isolated. So I know I probably put a whole bunch of softballs in the air there that you're like, all right, which one can I go after first? So I'll give you just a minute or two to respond to that, and then we'll dive into RBC 7 specifically.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I have a lot to comment on that, but
then that's fine. We can just keep moving on that one if you'd like. Cool. So let's jump to RBC 7 specifically. So Rome Book Club 7. The book you guys used was called what?
Oh, it was called Well-Being, the 5 Essential Elements.
And the author on that is?
Jim Harder. And Tom Rath, I think, is the co-author.
Okay, cool. We'll share a Goodreads link to that in the chat in a second. So real quick, before you dive into what RBC 7 is about, I want to point out that one of the cool things, but also maybe one of the tough things about running Rome Book Club, is that every iteration of Rome Book Club is done a little differently. Not just a different book, but sometimes the way it's run is kind of changed. Now, each one, it kind of builds on what you learn from 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so on. But also just by the nature of the material being different and the nature of the discussion being different, the way it's organized has been shifted around. So one, you and I were talking the other day about how it's essentially every time is like a startup, and the amount of
Yes.
time and decisions and thought and frankly blood, sweat, and tears that has to go into organizing each one is still very present. But the payoff of that is every time you guys are learning and growing and figuring out what does and doesn't work. So there's a little bit of I guess a clarifier for how RBC can change so much. But when it comes to RBC 7, why don't you give us an overview of what it was?
Okay, it was an invitation to really discover what collective intelligence around well-being is, and to leverage to really experiment and evaluate to what degree our own research would kind of move forward what a well-being commons could be, and to really do this in a very collaborative way, to do it in a very global way. I think we had participation from 5 continents in the world, and to really bring people who have a commitment to explore their well-being, to share well-being, to really have a structure to kind of begin to inquire into their purpose or legacy, and to really take a look at the 5 elements of well-being, which I'll iterate. Which the first of which is purpose, or sometimes called career well-being, and then there's social well-being, there's financial well-being, there's your physical well-being, and there's community well-being. And so it was really structured around. It was a 7 weeks. We had kind of an introduction, and then we essentially toured the 5 elements week after week, and then we kind of at the end really kind of reflected on, well, what did we create? What did we discover by bringing all the wisdom that we had collected around the 5 elements together? And so we effectively came up with a structure that mimics what we believe is a well-being commons, and we're still in the inquiry around how to develop this commons further. And it is designed to be an annual well-being club. It actually started in technically it started in a different platform in 2021. It was in Rome Research for 2022, and it's intended to reemerge in 2023. And the whole design also is, because there are these 5 elements, there's this idea of elemental deep dives. And so, for example, we just dived into a book called Dark Horse. And Dark Horse has very strong themes around purpose and success. And I think what we discovered yesterday is very strong themes of community well-being and what it means to be a contribution to the world. We're doing a deep dive on the art of gathering right now, which speaks very much to gathering people together and creating community well-being, for example. And you can see it's not so clear cut because art of gathering, definitely Priya Parker has a lot of themes around being very intentional about how you gather people, and having a very discernible purpose. And so you can see how the elements kind of fall into place. And so the intention is to be able to deep dive into the 5 elements over the course of a year, and then bring all that knowledge, all those insights back into the experience in January, and begin to really reflect on, what did we discover over the past year in our lives, in these deep dives, and really begin to evolve and really bolster, this well-being commons, and bring it to a whole new level, and then rinse and repeat.
Nice. Okay, so just to recap, so RBC 7, which finished up in mid-March, is that right?
Yeah, in March, that's correct.
So about 2 months ago, you guys read the book Well-Being, The 5 Essential Elements by Tom Rath, with
And
Jim Harder. Yep. And there are the 5 essential elements as they see it are purpose, social, financial, physical, and community. And throughout the book club, you guys looked at what each of those things were, making it through the entire book. You talked about how they all kind of tied together, and you created a system to engage with each one of these elements. Is that a rough regurgitation for you?
I think it's we call it a hive mind, and it was a construct that was invented in RBC 6, which you had mentioned, so good that they can't ignore your range. And we thought we would actually explore that structure that Maggie put together, that we all put together, and um, really dive into it. And I think a really important point that you made before, which is every RBC is different. And I think what's really great is that what's emerging now in the last 2 book clubs is we're actually trying to discover lightweight ways of leading a book club. And so you could even, I guess for your programmer and geeks out there, you can imagine like a main line of development. And sure, there's a lot of work in just kind of like developing the core product, right? And like discovering what all the components are and what this toolkit is for someone who wants to facilitate a Rome book club. And what we've discovered is this main line is really good for people who want to generate discourse and really want some infrastructure around the book to be able to really deepen and discover things way beyond the book. And we ultimately discovered that with this well-being book. We went way beyond the scope of the book. And that was exciting. And I guess my point is that the last 2 book clubs have been focusing on what is the minimal book club that we can create in Rome Book Club. And we're really happy yesterday to Naomi Peck just led the Dark Horse, and she did it in 4 sessions, and it was extremely organic. It didn't have a lot of overhead. We really minimized the way we were using Rome, and we were very focused on conversation. And you mentioned how to read the book. One of the core concepts of that is coming to terms with the author. So coming to terms with Todd Rose, who's the author of Dark Horse. We realized by having an opening discussion around the book, the second session was really coming to terms with the author very rigorously. And then the third session was like diving into into Rome and just like structuring almost like a knowledge base for people who are not familiar with Rome. And yesterday was our closing session, which we kind of wrapped it up, and it was really beautiful how simple a book club could be. And the point being is if you're interested in actually facilitating a book club through Rome, there's no one way to Rome. And so whatever lights you up, for me, it was the idea of building a well-being commons. Have at it, use the primitives and tools that are available. The community is always there to support you. Come with a vision, in terms of what it is, and just create it. And that's effectively what I discovered myself.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. So before I forget, I want to make sure to mention, for people who want to get plugged into Rome Book Club specifically, how would you recommend they do that?
Well, you could first off probably just contact me. We are in the process of, designing a landing page to kind of like share what Rome Book Club is, and share some success stories for Rome Book Club. It's to be launched. And so I would say contact me. I'd happy to have a conversation and connect you with the organizing team, and would love to hear your thoughts on what book you might want to lead and facilitate, and design some outcomes in regards to what you want to achieve in that book club. And for some, it might be just conversation. For others, it might be some very, very clear. So like in RBC 7, for example, there was a very clear result of creating your narrative framework, and we were using the narrative framework to kind of store all our insights. You can almost imagine it like a kind of a bone, like putting the flesh on the bones, in terms of what your purpose, what your design of your life is. That was the intention of, to kind of, by end of the club, to come out with this life map of yours. And so, but that's complete. That's, whether you do something as constructive as that, or whether it is just open conversation, intellectual conversation, it's all good.
So if people are interested in potentially running or being a part of the volunteer side of Rome Book Club, they should contact you, which the best way to do so is what?
Oh, I would say that a variety of ways. I could be found on Twitter. My handle is at Chinarut. You can go ahead and direct message me there. Um, if you don't get a response from me in a timely manner, you can always email support@romeresearch.com, and one of the lovely people on the support team will certainly connect you to the team as well.
Cool. And then if people just wanted to participate in a Rome Book Club, how would they do that?
I would also email support at romeresearch.com. And again, you're welcome to contact me. And, I'm happy to be your guide to the commons and kind of point you the way. I mean, we're quickly moving towards a model where it's not so linear. Like we're trying to move away from the RBC1, RBC2, RBC3, and we're really trying to move towards a more abundant model where there are multiple clubs, running at once, and that our website will be an index of everything that's coming up, and push this button if you want to, generate a club. We really envision the push button club, that you push this button, it'll create a space. You declare what the book is, you declare the participants, and people just get together and just run a book.
No, I like that a lot, and I do want to emphasize that participating in quote unquote the official Rome Book Club up to this point, there's been a lot of learning and a lot of structure and a lot of things and thought that have gone into creating that specific instance of the book club, but that certainly is just what one version of it can look like. And right. The real value, we talked about, you and I talked a little bit about the value that we got out of these instances of Rome Book Club. But at the end of the day, the biggest value it's getting people is having people meaningfully engage with each other, especially, and the format of it, for those who aren't aware, and we didn't mention this, was basically once a week people met for about 2 months or so. Is that roughly right? 7 sessions, I think you said, maybe.
It's a rule of thumb. It's generally, we've been running with 6 sessions.
6 sessions.
I happen to do 7 because I had a gap week, but this
cool.
is
the
magic is you can really. We discovered
right. You can change it how you want. I was just saying how it's gone up to this point with these specific instances has been, 6 or so sessions that are, I think they were 1 to 3 hours, depending on how much of the after show you wanted to participate in. And it was a mix of group discussion as well as small group discussion. And that's kind of loosely speaking how it was, combined with the asynchronous part, which is where everyone has this digital notebook that they're working out of together. And then, of course, some people have their own, personal private notebook that they're doing even more stuff within. So if you want to get really involved and get plugged in on all of those levels, you can. Or if you wanted to do something a lot more lightweight, where it's just, hey, we're doing a book club together, we're utilizing Rome as a tool to help these things happen, that's a possibility as well. So I'm excited to see how the facilitators help facilitating going forward. Because I think, figuring out how we can replicate that and get that into the hands of more people, I think will be really interesting and really empowering. So we talked about you, we talked about Tool for Thoughts, we talked about Rome Book Club in general, we talked about the Creative Commons idea, a little bit about RBC7. one thing that I wanted to touch on, and I'll say this is going to be very brief compared to how much we could touch on this, is the concept of business model U. So recognizing that we'll go probably more in depth into this another day. Why don't you give us a quick overview of what business model U is and how it tied into this book club for you?
Okay. So when I used the term narrative framework a few minutes ago, it is in direct reference to the business model U, which is essentially a one-page. In fact, if you could see right behind me, these posters right here are based on the business model generation, Alex Osterwalder. He essentially went on a mission to, we all have business plans and they go out of date, they collect dust. What could you create a really nimble way, a really easy way to create a startup, for example, or start your business and be able to iterate on it, on a weekly basis. And so Tim Clark, one of the people in the community, got the bright idea. Well, couldn't we just use this kind of business model thinking towards our lives? And so I think one of the reasons that I love being on this show is I just feel like this tool is helpful for life, and it allows you to put your CEO, you're the CEO of your life, and you get a chance to be able to kind of map out what your life looks like in the structure of a business model. And so you're going to be able to bring all this rigor that technically a CEO of a 10,000 person organization brings to a business model to your own life. And so this has just been a really fun way. It's been a discovery of what this tool, how useful this tool has been. It's allowed me to invent my personal brand, Weave Your Legacy. In the previous episode, we talked about dance, and I'm actually been experimenting with creating the life narrative outside of this and actually dancing it. Is something I call it Dance Your Life. And in RBC 7, we experimented with using this method to capture your purpose and to almost like track your progress and really almost see the before and after of you. And I'm hoping it to be kind of a living model, such that when you come back in January of next year, we get to update it and we get to really reflect on, this is what you saw for yourself, last year in 2022. And let's take a look at, how you evolved, how you shifted. And so this is just a really wonderful structure that I found quite malleable to be used in a variety of ways. And it is the heart of kind of interconnecting our models together. They call them personal business models. So you can imagine a web of personal business models, your model, my model, our audience's model, and all the organizations that you're connected to and communities. It's this kind of fractal network of which essentially is the essence of what we're about.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, because it goes right back to what we were talking about as the whole premise of the episode, right? The benefit of having networked thoughts and the benefit of having networked people, right? And so just to recap real quick, the business model, the personal business model canvas, is that what the thing is called? The personal business model canvas?
It's called the business model U, and the individual one is your personal business model.
Cool. Perfect. So we shared link to the first book, which was called Business Model Generation, by Alexander Osterwalder. And that was about having this visual, somewhat lightweight of a way to create a business model, with the whole point of it being it fits on one page. You can see it. Sometimes these when you get into business models, they get to be these huge, long documents that no one wants to create, no one wants to actually go through or read. And so a lot of times that leads to people just not doing them, right? And so that's one of the benefits of this, is it allows you to see it a snapshot, allows others to see it a snapshot. What are the key things that go into this business? So they then adopted that, with Tim Clark adopted that to create Business Model U, which his subtitle is A One-Page Method for Reinventing Your Career. And I think it's worth pointing out, and you tell me if you disagree, because I haven't actually read the book or gone through this book club. or dug that much into business model U. But although maybe it has the lens of a career, I would encourage people to look at it in a broader thing, just not just
Mm.
about your job, but it's about your life. Would you say
That's
that's a
right.
fair assessment?
Absolutely. I think the positioning as a career is a little bit more accessible, to a lot of people, and but at its core, it's really about your life and your life design and how you create your life, how you lead your life.
Yes, and just to use some of the terms that are on the personal business model, you have your key resources, your key partners, your key activities, your customers, which customers and you have a business makes you think one thing, but customer in your life is something a little bit different. What
Yeah,
what are the costs associated with it? What are the revenue and the benefits that you gain?
yeah,
So it's a cool concept. I like it a lot, and the idea of applying a business mindset to our lives is something that really resonates with me, and I think is extremely important. And I highly recommend people to think about it. And because the reality is if you reframe your life like a business, then and if it's a business that you care about and you want to
mm,
thrive and you want to be able to do all of the things that it can do, in my mind, then it kind of just changes your perspective on how you look at it and think, okay, well, am I giving this business all of the tools it needs for it to be successful? Am I putting it in the situations it could be put in? Am I providing it with the partners to help it be successful? Am I giving it the education to achieve the things that it wants to achieve? Am I giving it the tools and the training to help it be successful? And when you start to flip it to where, again, just like the value of writing out something. It allows you to put it outside of yourself and examine it. Same
mhm.
kind of thing with this. Allows you to put yourself outside of yourself and say, well, what is it I'm really trying to do? And how am I going to do that? And how can I help make these things be successful? And then I would add a little bit of cautioning and saying, hey, don't go too far down the rabbit hole. There's certainly a downfall of trying to hyper optimize everything and make sure everything's perfect and make sure you're doing all of the things. Like you could lead to putting a whole bunch of pressure upon yourself, which I think is one of the values of getting plugged in with the community. So you can help find that right balance of like, all right, Steve, like I know you want to learn 5 languages and write 17 books and interact with a million people, but maybe spread that out a little more than just this week. did
Yeah,
you did
yeah.
you run into any issues with that, either yourself personally or as people are kind of going through this self analysis and things like that?
Yes. The more that you step into your purpose and realize how much power you have in designing your life exactly the way you want, then you're going to run into scope because if you step into your freedom, then anything becomes possible, and so then it becomes a life of discovery, sharing your life with others, and seeing how what it is that you're saying lands with other people, and discovering who your collaborators are, who your key partners are, right, and who are the people that you actually help, and discovering what value, like why they love your help, right, and discovering what you get out of it and what you give to it. I mean, those are all, I'm basically iterating the different parts of the canvas, and the beauty of the canvas method is that it's a finite piece of paper. There's only so many post-its that fits on one of these models, and if you so it's good to have those constraints, and it definitely prevents a lot of the runaway thoughts, from happening. And I'm going to be honest, I'm dealing with transforming my own model from 2017 right now, and there is a part of me that doesn't want to let go of that model. It's like, no, no, I was really inspired by that model, but my life looks so different now. But yet, like right behind me, I haven't taken the post-its off off the old model yet. So I'm always humbled, even though I've been doing this method for over 8 years. Um, I'm always encountering, looking at a model that I'm kind of going through maybe some grieving process over letting go and having a willingness to create newly, which is really the essence of life.
Yes, and it's also what leads to a thriving company a lot of times, right? And
Hmm.
also the lack there of the ability to pivot or change or update with the times is often what leads to companies failing, right? You know, to give a couple of examples, Blockbuster and Kodak are two examples
Yeah,
of
yeah,
companies
yeah,
that
yeah.
were very strong contenders and were around for a long time, but never quite saw the writing on the wall that things were changing and times were updating, and they didn't shift with it. So I think that's a great part of this concept is that hey, it's meant to be lightweight in its initial creation, um, but force you to think through things. But
Yes,
because of its ease of digestion and ease of creation, it encourages you to shift it around a little bit. Now, again,
that's
another word of caution, like you can have your initial ideation where you're kind of shifting and moving and changing. But I would encourage people to, after maybe the initial setup, have that be your target for a while. Don't always go shifting that target around, or it can lead to some troublesome things. Have your target, have it sit there, work towards these things, and then come back and revisit and tweak. A phrase I say a lot is separate the do from the think. Using this model allows you to do some of that thinking up front, set up the model to be what you want it to be or what you think you want it to be. Recognize that it's going to change, it's going to update. But don't think you need to be making those tweaks and changes every single day, because sometimes that could lead to a little bit of strife in itself.
yes, yes. And to be realistic, there are startups out there, who pivot their model on a weekly basis based on their discovery of how their quote unquote product is landing out there. And so know that the method does support that level of
Adaptation.
adaptability,
Yeah, adaptability. There you go.
nimbleness. And the key concept is to validate your hypotheses. So if you think that you make a difference with social media companies and you go out there and it's just not sticking, you, you might want to take that post-it off and put something else on. Or you might realize that social media is not who you serve and maybe they're your partners or something like that. It's those kinds of discoveries. And,
Yeah,
and
don't be
uh,
afraid to kill your darlings, and adapt and change. But
yes,
on the same token, like don't just try something once or twice and then give up on it, because
yes,
there's probably going to, especially if you're starting afresh, there's probably something that needs to happen to get that initial traction, right?
that's right. And the other thing I want to say is that it's beautiful how the personal business model and the business model pair with each other because it gives you two access points. You might be really familiar with your business, your small business that you're building, and you might want to go there and map that out and learn the methodology, and then you'll be able to do kind of your own individual model. Or you might have a better sense of yourself and you're still not sure what small business you want to create. Then you might start with the personal model and kind of get a sense of yourself and then create and then use what you learned from that and extrapolate that to an entity, a community, an organization out there that you want to create, and that will allow you to dance between kind of the personal, which you can take things personally when things don't work out, and the externalization aspect of like creating a business.
Yes, and I do want to emphasize, although this exercise is certainly great for people who are looking to create an organization of their own, is by no means a requirement of doing the
Oh, that's right.
personal business model. It's just like a hey, if you've got both, you may benefit from doing them in a certain order.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you have no intention of ever starting something of your own, there's a lot of value in doing your own personal
Yes,
business
absolutely.
model. All
Yeah.
right, so let's start to wrap up here, but and this is one that again we're just gonna scratch the surface on. We'll have future discussions on, but I wanted to ask you, first, what were some of your biggest takeaways or learnings from facilitating RBC7?
I think one foremost, and I alluded to it earlier, which was the willingness to adapt to your participants. It's really easy to go into a book club and kind of And and I highly recommend mapping out what you intend to do over 6 or 7 weeks, right, or even 4 sessions. Um, but uh, the willingness to really get that you're collaborating with other human beings who have their own ideas and perspectives and thoughts on life, especially if you're leading a topic like well-being and something that can be very personal. Um, yeah, I was very humbled in having to adapt constantly and really get that I don't know everything, that I'm here to facilitate a conversation and learn how to include the content of others and books that people were bringing to the table, and facilitate, even mediate, any. And there weren't really disagreements, but there were differences in perspective, which I alluded before. Financial well-being was definitely a spot that we had some success in, just realizing how smooth it could be to kind of lead that conversation and honor a lot of different perspectives. And so I would say that that was a key. That was one of the biggest takeaways, was learning how to adapt with the community that you're leading. Um, yeah, that's a big one. I guess I
Yeah.
could start with that one.
No, I think that is a great one. And so being adaptable, and a couple other things I mentioned there was coming with a plan, and coming with an idea of the structure, but being willing for that structure to be fluid, as
Mm-hmm.
you're taking in the inputs of other people. Because the reality is as you get things in front of more people, get other perspectives, other ideas, and things like that. Hopefully, you'll things will change and shift a little bit, but they'll move towards the better. That's not always the case, but at the very least, if you come from a place of curiosity and exploration, which I would say are probably two of the big tenets of Rome Book Club, curiosity, exploration, and community. You're coming to learn, you're coming to look at things a different way, and you're coming to be open to changes. And I imagine that a lot of people had something click for them or change as they were going through this process, or at the very least having better understanding of others as they're going through this well-being journey. So I think that's really cool, and I'm glad that there was such a whole holistic approach to it, and recognizing that there are a lot of different elements to well-being and the overlap between them, as you mentioned earlier. um, there's a lot as well. So as you leverage RBC7 into what's next, incorporating this idea of structure but fluidity, are there any other key aspects that you think we should make sure to include as we're looking for the next ways for people to collaborate online and to create new ways of thinking and things like that?
Mm. Yeah, if I may acknowledge what I do feel like the community, the participants got out of the experience. We went from, really, it's really easy to think of well-being as a me phenomenon. You know, my physical well-being, my body, where I live, and people around me, and that's completely valid. But I think one of the key takeaways was that well-being is very much a we phenomenon, WE, and it happens in sharing your well-being with others, and creating community with others, and sharing your purpose, right, and discovering what sticks and doesn't stick. Um, and so that would be really the theme of the next iteration of Wellbeing Club, which is really to kind of deepen this whole concept of well-being as a we phenomenon, and really begin to dive into that, and bring that collective understanding of well-being to another level. And I think I had mentioned that we are in the process of doing these kind of deep dives, elemental dives, into other books, that we can tie into well-being, and this is very much, it's very validating, as we dive into these other books, the value of community, the value of being a contribution, and coming from this kind of higher purpose. And so I think we're kind of setting the stage for um, more of a demand to come to a method like, for example, like the business model U, and creating your narrative framework, because it comes in that sharing, it comes in that discovery of self with others. And so, yeah, I'm really excited about that next phase that's happening right now.
Oh, cool. Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing with us today. If there's, well, I guess just to recap, well, I'll save the recap for after I let you go. But if there's one step, or I guess let me put it this way. So, I'm going to start about 5 sentences, then I'll finish one of them. Don't worry. So as part of our show every day, and this is very much without notice, so feel free to just say no or pass or whatever. But is there we like to issue a challenge to our audience after every episode, one way they can take a step today to just make some small improvement to their lives. As we had this discussion today about, collaborating with others, getting involved with the community, potentially getting involved in some sort of book club, potentially getting plugged in with some sort of tool for thought. Is there some action that you think is a simple action somebody could take today that would help them move along this journey for themselves?
It's easy to just say, go out there and dance, and build a healthy movement habit. But one of the things that I do want to acknowledge is sometimes when we take a look at a method like the business model I mean, it's an entire book, right? It's not that hard. It's a lot simpler than that. You could actually spend 10, 15 minutes developing your personal business model, your narrative framework. As long as you write one thing in each of the 9 blocks, you actually have achieved the first iteration of your model. It's really that easy. And so just to write something that comes to mind in each of those 9 blocks is all you need to do. And if you want to do checks and balances, then what we discovered in RBC7 is use the 5 elements of well-being and see, have you touched upon each of those 5 elements inside your model? And that can be a really simple way to start. And then ask yourself, since we're a bunch of bookworms here, is there a source? Is there a book that really could forward the action and really give you maybe a next level of knowledge to be able to take on what it is that you aspire to? Nice. I know that's one step, but I would say that would be a very simple exercise to take on.
Yeah, for sure. And we will share a link to Business Model U in the chat as well. I believe people should be able to download the little framework there, or you can just find it on Google Images. And there are some terms that what's that?
I have there is something in a social comments in a graph. I can go ahead and send you the link.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, so we'll include that. And then yeah, I mean, for some of these words, I mean, even if you're not completely sure what they mean, one, you could take a glance online to find something out, but also you could kind of just go with your gut for your first 0.1 revision. And the biggest thing is not as much in you're doing the exact right method or the exact right process, much like a book club. It's more about the fact that you are taking the time and the effort to invest in yourself and to think about yourself and what it is you're trying to do and where do you want that company, quote unquote, of your life to go. What do you want it to do? What do you want it to achieve? And I want to point out that this is going to vary wildly based on who you are and what you want in life, right? Some people may want to do something that takes over the world and has billions of people involved. Some people may just want to live a good life and just have a simple, happy existence with a handful of people around them or by themselves in the wood. There's no quote unquote right way or right life to live. You get to decide what it is. And that's part of the beauty of it. And part of the value of engaging with a community is you get to be exposed to a whole bunch of different versions of what this might look like. And there may be things that you've never even thought of before, which, oh, by the way, I guarantee you there are, because part of the value of engaging with a community like this is people come from all different walks of life, whether you realize it or not, where you're from, where you grew up, where you went to school, the people that are immediately around you, what content you consume, that all shapes your view of the world. And when you get involved with the community, especially one that's as diverse and geographically diverse as Rome Book Club is, the value is you can be exposed to things you never would have thought of otherwise. And maybe you can find out, hey, how someone's living their life over in New Zealand or down in South America or in Vietnam or wherever. Their constraints look a little different than yours do. But yet they come up with what life looks like to them and what's important to them. And so maybe there's aspects you want to borrow from them, and maybe there are aspects they want to borrow from you. So that's part of the value of getting involved in the community. So I would say the challenge for today, guys, is to go take a look at the personal business model U, and take your first cut at it. And, Chinarut, you and I can work offline to do some sort of maybe we'll go through it with me or something, and we'll kind of talk through the process so people can have a spot if they want a little bit more hand holding throughout that guide or through that thing. But I think that's a good way to, help people have a framework to evaluate their lives by, and recognize that it's going to change, it's going to evolve. But go ahead and take that first cut and then talk with somebody about it. Let us know, any of those things are all great. Any last thoughts, Chinarut?
Oh, I love it. Yeah. If you do take it on, share. That's the most important thing that you could do. And find a trusted partner, a best friend, anyone. I mean, if you're so bold, someone on the street. Reid and I are certainly both here to provide whatever support in discovering your life and a new aspect of your life. And so, I'd be delighted to connect with anybody who could use the support, and know that I believe in you as a self-starter. And, I think it's really important to do, to create whatever you can, on your own, but just not, don't lone wolf it, but get started on your own and just share whatever progress you make. So I'm excited to see what happens.
Well, thank you so much for having us, or not for having us. Thank you so much for being here with us, rather. Appreciate your time. And with that, we'll see you in the future. Thanks, Chinarut.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much.
Bye. Well, that has certainly been an interesting discussion for me. Hopefully you guys have gotten some value out of it. And, I'll keep our recap brief today, since we had a nice breadth of conversation. So we talked about, gave a quick intro to who Chinarut is and what he's working on with his Weave Your Legacy, which we have a link for in the description. And we'll make sure to also include that in the chat. And then we dove into what are our tools for thought. We talked about how Rome research is one of those tools for thought that I've been using. And we talked about the value of getting your thoughts outside of your brain so you can look at them, you can manipulate them, you can use them to do what you want to do, help you accomplish what you want to accomplish. And then also the value of them being outside of yourself is that you can get them in front of other people as well. And you can get their thoughts, and you can help work through things together in a collaborative way to help move forward. I think this is a really big time for us as a society across the world, as we start to figure out more and better ways for us to communicate with each other, especially asynchronously, as we figure out ways for us to chat and think on these tough problems of the world that we're trying to solve. I mean, we all know there's tons of them to deal with. So as we can get more smart, caring people together to think through things and work through solutions, I think we're going to see a significant amount of positive change go through the world as we start to grease the skids as to how we can get the right people having the right conversations for the right reasons. So I think having Chinarut here today to talk through one sample of what it can look like when you have a group of people with somewhat of a charter of, hey, let's work together, let's think together, let's feel together, with Rome Book Club. And he just ran Rome Book Club 7, which we mentioned that I participated in and Ryder participated in RBC 5 and 6. So good they can't ignore your range is kind of the hybrid name we talked about on previous iterations of What the Hell is Water. We've mentioned that. And then RBC 5 was the How to Read a Book, which has also come up on What the Hell is Water. We talked about the idea of a commons, and Chinarut gave us a little bit of information about how commons back in the day started with a field where you're sharing cows or maybe, food of some sort, where you have these things that you're working together to maintain and create, that also are for the better of the community as a whole. And how he is trying to take that idea of a commons and move it into the digital space, where we are thinking and working together. But at the end of the day, we're all rooted in the human. We're rooted in the fact that we are people living in the real world, and we're trying to take our perspectives and our thoughts and work with others to share and compare and work towards greater good together. And then we talked some specifically about RBC 7, which is where they talked about the book Well-Being, the 5 Essential Elements by Tom Rath and James K. Harder. And that book, the 5 essential elements were purpose, social, financial, physical, and community. And he talked about how in RBC 7, they talked about each one of those and how they kind of intertwined with each other. And now they're actually doing, in addition to the main course of the book club, they were doing a deep dive on each of those 5. And so they just finished up RBC 7 with this well-being book 2 months ago, and they're going to be launching next year. They're going to be doing it again. It's meant to be an annual kind of check-in of your well-being, and so they're looking forward to seeing what that looks like next year with some of the repeat members who've now spent a year kind of in their well-being with their personal business model, and how has it shifted, how has it changed, what have they learned throughout the year. So I look forward to seeing what that's like in a few months. As part of RBC 7, they had what was called the personal business model, business model U, and then you use the personal business model canvas. And essentially what it is, it's a one-pager that shows you, hey, what are the key things that make up my life and what I'm trying to do? What are the benefits I'm getting? What are the costs that are associated with it? Who are the people I'm interacting with? And by using that framework, which is first was used as business model, simply for business, by adapting the idea of treating yourself like a business, what are all the things that you could accomplish if you are intentionally sitting down and making a plan and making intentions of what you want to do, and what are some of the pieces to help you do that. So that was the business model U. And then lastly, we wrapped up with talking about some of the things that we may leverage into going forward, both with the Rome Book Club and some other things Chinarut and myself may do. And one of the biggest things he emphasized was the ability for us to remain flexible and the ability for us to engage with the community. It seemed like those were two of the biggest things, recognizing that each individual is going to come with their own value, and the best laid plans may still be changed as you start to incorporate what everyone else thinks around it. So with that, I will remind everyone that our challenge for today was to check out the business model U, and we've included a link to that, which also has a printable version of the business model, personal business model, if you would like to include that yourself and print it out and do it for yourself, or just look at it and do on your own Word document or with your sticky notes or however you want to do it. But the goal with it is to fill out these things, and I'll read off just some of the things so it's not very intimidating. It says who helps you, what you do, who you are / what you have, how you help, your roles, relationships, how they know you, how you deliver, who you help, what you get, and what you give. So by sitting down and taking even as little as 15 minutes to just analyze each one of these things and how they play a part in your life, it will help you do the things that you want to do more effectively. And who knows, maybe it'll change what you want to do. Maybe as you're starting to write it down, you might realize the disconnect between what it is you're doing today and what it is you'd like to be doing. But with that, I will wrap us up for today and hope you guys have a wonderful Monday, and we'll see you guys later.